guys, happy Wednesday. Hope we're all doing great. Gonna wait for some of you to jump on. Really cool guest today. You probably know who she is, Brooke Baldwin. Journalist, TV host, author. Her book is super interesting. Can't wait to deep dive that. Her book is called Huddle: How Women Unlock Their Collective Power. Huddle. Hi, Terry. Hi, you guys. So I'm really honored. I'm super stoked to be able to learn from Brooke. I've watched her on CNN for many years. And from one journalist to another, from one broadcaster to another, I'm always curious how people effectively communicate. I'm always amazed by her ability because I feel like I'm right in the room with her. So I'm always curious how people communicate, especially on broadcast TV, a big one like CNN. So I'm really excited to have her on and talk about her book because I feel like she's learned a few things along the way. Let's see if that worked. Fingers crossed. Technology always is a bit dicey over here. Let me see. Did that not work? Oh, we got her on. Hey!
What's going on, Erin?
Brooke, how you doing?
What's up?
Where are you jumping in from? Are you on the East Coast?
Downtown Manhattan. How about you?
Nice. I'm in heat wave LA right now.
I'm flying to LA. I'll be there for like the next 2 weeks. And my husband, as I was like, starting to actually think ahead, normally I'm like the super last minute packer. And he was like, it's been 100-something degrees because I have all these sweaters. I'm like, I'm going to be cozy. It's Los Angeles. What is going on?
Yeah. It's still summer. It's still summertime. We're on a flex alert, like level 3 in my location where I'm at. And it means like literally don't use your air conditioning. And it is so hot. All my dogs are laying on tile and wood. I'm having to spray them with water bottles because everybody's really hot. So anyway, so just maybe pack light.
Pack bathing suits.
Just lots of ventilation is what I'll recommend. But hey, I really thank you so much for the time. I know you're really busy, and I've just
never too busy. And thank you. I feel when the call came in or the email came in like months ago, we've had this sucker planned for like months on the calendar. I'm flattered, honestly, and thank you for all that you do about not being this. Gorgeous, brilliant, but, being real about being a woman, women's issues, mental health, all of that. Like, thank you.
I have found, and I appreciate that. That really, I've looked up to you and admired your work as I was introducing you for a long time, just because you have such an ability to make people feel very comfortable. It's almost like you just radiate this element of trust and truth. And we can't deny the truth in your book. And I want to talk about your book because it really, I'm getting goosebumps right now, just finding how much it really resonates with me as a female who works in a sports, more male dominated industry, and what Huddle might mean to the people that are watching and how it might mean to someone like you and I. But you have a book you just recently wrote. It's called Huddle: How Women Unlock Their Collective Power. And what I wanted to ask you first was describe what you mean by huddling, because it could be different than what people might think.
Sure. So I intentionally use this word, which obviously women huddle, men huddle, on the sport, on the pitch, on the field. But, for the most part, I think of a bunch of dudes with, football players with the black and the huddle on the field. And it feels very masculine to me. And I wanted to take this masculine lace word, flip it on its head and feminize it. And I wanted us as women to own this thing that, by the way, we have been doing forever, and especially Black and brown women in this country have been doing since before slavery, right? And so I just wanted to legitimize this notion that we are our best when we are leaning on one another, linking arms. Huddle can be 2 women, it can be 500,000 women, as I talked about my big aha moment at the Women's March in Washington back in 2017. And it's this notion, whether it's leaning on women, whether it's moms with kids in the same school, or, in a workout, in a class, or off a yoga mat, or in a quiet church basement. It can be productive, but it can also be that sort of like quiet moment of knowing I've got your back. I'm looking out for you. I truly believe with every bone in my being that we are best when we are looking out for one another, and when we're together, when we're huddling.
And you obviously wrote a book because you explored, you noticed the political landscape, the entertainment landscape, so many, like you said, Black and brown communities. Why was it necessary for you to write a book? Because it's something that feels like it's still mystical or mysterious, or not something that we embrace. Why did you realize a book like this needed to be written?
Well, Erin, let me take you back to, 2016. Obviously, it was a really slow news cycle. This guy, decided to, a former game show host, contestant, and real estate guy here in New York, I'm forgetting his name, this guy, turned the tables, turned the rule book, turned everything, turned civility discourse process upside down. And so, we were all covering him and the race that was 2016. I was crisscrossing the country when I wasn't sitting in, my anchor spot in the studio. Like I was in it, and I had never noticed before so many women just showing up, whether it was left, right, or center, really just paying attention to what was happening politically in the country. And then, I'm being facetious. Like it was an insane news cycle, but I was possessed, as I'm sure you can really relate. In there are things that happen in your life that you're like, so what, that my day job is insanely demanding. I have to go do this thing for myself, for my soul. And I have a funny feeling that if I'm curious about what's happening with women in this country, other people would be interested as well. So, people saw me for 2 hours every afternoon in the throes of 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, even pre-COVID. And that's when I had this idea, which I go into in the beginning of the book, about, being at the Women's March and, being in, embedded in the Trump the Trump inauguration, the motorcade going to the White House, and then being at the Women's March. And so all of it was like a giant accumulation. And I just had to do this thing. I didn't know what it was going to develop into, but I had to do this thing. And I had to, just like journalistically, I followed my nose.
I mean, and it could not be a better time right now, because as a female, I like autonomy over my body, over the decisions I make over my body. And it is interesting that and I also say this with respect to everyone has their own political belief or their own political affiliation. I have the right to verbalize and vocalize what mine are, and I would like to be able to have the right to make choices that I see fit for my own autonomy, that I don't necessarily want a man to decide for me, and vice versa. I don't want to decide for a man to make decisions about his own body. And so it is an interesting time to publish a book, knowing all of this sort of is something that is on the horizon, where I think women, it is a really interesting time to be a woman right now, because we have so much choice, so much empowerment, so much awareness, and yet we're in this interesting dichotomy. How are you looking at it in terms of the landscape as a female, as someone who is influential, trying to educate? And I know you took this call because this felt meaningful for you.
Yeah. I think, first of all, I've never been more proud to be a woman. It is the biggest compliment that anyone can give me, to say that I'm a woman's woman. I talk in the book about like real deep loneliness and not having a huddle, because I chose career over so much for really the first chunk of my 20s, right? Where you're like climbing the ladder, and in our industry, as you pointed out off the top, like it's this really male dominated TV or sports broadcasting culture. I think that, so what I was interested in is, I looked at whether it was, interviewing Sue Bird. Let's give her a shout out for her, final game last night, and talking to Sue. We're talking to Megan Rapinoe. We're talking to Hillary Knight in U.S. Women's hockey, and talking about how like they all came around one another in order to bring about change, equal pay, collaborating to be able to make sure like the league stays and is healthy. And that, you know, in the WNBA's case, that, you know, my gosh, like that mothers who are playing actually don't have to bunk with other women when they have children. Okay. When they're traveling for games, to Stacey Abrams and how she huddles with a number of people who with different ideological and political views as her, or how she, you know, threw down her ladder, to borrow a Megan Rapinoe phrase, you know, back when she was, you know, young and upcoming in the city of Atlanta, and wanted to help a bunch of sort of lowlier legal aids, you know, make more money, because they were so integral to her and her brain trust as she was moving up and fighting for what was happening in Atlanta, to new moms, to military spouses, to, you know, folks like Gloria Steinem and Billie Jean King, who I got to interview for my book. So I say all of this to say, you know, Ava DuVernay, what she's doing with Black women filmmakers in Hollywood, like all these women I got to interview, Reese Witherspoon, Hello Sunshine, what she's doing by putting women at the center of the story. The point is,
oh my God, that's awesome.
I'm like, I just get so fired up talking about this, because the point is like, and also now to, you know, with Roe v. Wade, it's like, I've had people reach out to me and I'm like, yes, you know, that all these women speaking up, that it's become one giant huddle of activism in both spaces, but those are huddles. And what I'm trying to show people is that we bring about success and change by being together and not by fighting the fight alone. That's it.
Yeah. And it's sharing our stories candidly. And like you said, it felt alone. I did feel alone. You know, I felt like I had to make a choice of, I get to have the family or I get to have the career. And I always wondered, like, why can't I have like both and feel understood? You know, I not that long ago interviewed a very well-known entertainment lawyer who represents successful actors. And he said the one thing he gets the most requests that his clients ask for whenever they're shooting a movie is nanny care. Like, have the nanny with them on set. And it's so funny because, you know, that may not have been the request 10, 5, you know, years ago. And now it's like, yes, we want to be able to have the opportunity to do both and feel understood. And I remember when I was speaking with my mom, she said, I never had maternity leave. I had to do like 6 months paid or 6 months time off, not paid. Yeah. And it's just, we want to move the ball forward by telling our stories and having people understand. And just like you said, being in the newsroom where it's a very, you know, at the time, a really male dominated decision-making place where men were deciding for us how, you know, our rights should be handled or if we needed certain things. And you just want to feel represented and understood. Yeah. And I love that your book is talking about this stuff.
But let me add to that, because I also love the one thing I really didn't tackle in the book, and the thing I get asked a lot about, is like generationally, who huddles more? And I find so much hope in the younger generation, in millennials, who are like, wait, of course I'm going to have this thing, you know, like, of course I'm going to ask for the thing, or I'm not even going to ask for the thing. I'm going to assume that I'm going to have this thing where I work, or, you know, whatever it may be. Whereas folks, you know, I'm in my young 40s and I'm still on the cusp of, you know, I'm not quite my mom where she's like, oh, I would never ask for that, or I would never assume, you know, and I'm still sort of like, is it possible if I ask for a raise? Like, I'm pretty sure the guys over here are making 3 times more. Can I ask for a little bit more, you know? And the women who are 10, 15 years younger than me are like, of course I'm going to ask. And so I'm so, you know, my mind is still on sports. I'm thinking so much about the WNBA, and like Brianna Stewart was, you know, with the Seattle Storm. She was saying to me, like, we were hanging out a couple months ago, and she was like, of course we should be flying on, you know, charter jets, or of course I'm going to assume that this is going to happen for us. You know, if I want that to be manifested, you know, that is how we should be thinking, respectfully. That's how we should be thinking moving forward.
And not be considered a B or high maintenance or the labels that the women get, a diva, for asking for support. Because here's the thing. Can I just tell you I'm going to air out my grievance.
Go, girl, go.
As a sports broadcaster, I had to make sure I am equally as prepared as my male counterpart, because if I got a stat wrong, She doesn't know what she's talking about. She said a name wrong. Oh my God, out, get her out. But then equally, Brooke, I had to look a certain way. So we have to come more prepared than our male counterpart, who's probably played in a huddle as a pro athlete, because that's usually who we get paired up with, an analyst. But then we need to look a certain way.
Yeah.
So I'm in there, I need 3 hours, 4 hours of prep time, because my content of my show is more important than how I look.
Yes.
But then I also need to step on studio and look a certain way.
Yes.
So the demand for a female as a broadcaster, and I know you had to go through this, is so ever present that that all we want is just support. Thank you, whoever just said I support women, because it's just, unless you start talking about it, people don't realize, they don't understand that I have such a pressure to sound good, and equally as big of an emphasis to look just as good.
My goodness, Erin, how much time do we have? How much time do we have? I mean, listen, I can completely relate. And a couple of things. Number one, I was so there. I mean, I think I got, when it was 2010, when I started with my own show, 2 hours in the afternoon, I was like barely 30. And it's a crazy story how I ended up with the show, but nevertheless, I was there, I was ready, willing, and able to do it. And I remember waking up hours and hours. It's, people who don't understand how TV news or sports, broadcasting works. It's like, you have to be prepared. You have to be over prepared, because I think the audience is smart. And I think the audience can tell the difference between somebody who shows up and reads the glass, meaning like just reads the teleprompter and the questions that are thrown in there by your team, versus someone who actually does the work, does the reading, comes up with the questions, collaborates with the team. And so, I'd be up early, and in my mind, it was always like Wolf Blitzer, who became such a dear friend. But I'm like, if I'm sharing oxygen with Wolf Blitzer on the same freaking TV channel, man, I better get up extra early. I'd be heating up my Trader Joe's, microwavable lunch in the little CNN Center lunch room, while I'm like sitting on the mini fridge, still reading all the AP wire, because the news never stops and it's constantly coming in, and I got to yada yada yada. And then, of course, you got to sit in hair and makeup, which God bless those ladies and gents for being so talented. But it's like, it's a lot, but it's also such a privileged perch that we've, been able to be part of. But I really admire women now who I see on TV who aren't quite as perfectly polished. Like when I look back at, all the extensions and the lashes and the things and oh my gosh, it's in the legs and the things and all of that. And I love people showing up a little bit more naturally. That is, I love, folks wearing maybe, pantsuits or sneakers, just like bringing that authenticity, because I found that I really did that through COVID when I was stuck doing my own hair and makeup, which I'm actually not amazing at. And I felt so much more me, because I felt so much more natural and so much like dropped into myself, that I think that some of the best work I did, because I was less done and felt just more embodied, if that makes sense, like the last 2 years that I was sitting in that chair. Is that crazy?
It's not, because I know exactly what you mean. There's something about, and I love dressing up and looking great, but there was something about wearing high heels on set that made me feel a little unbalanced, especially dealing with very large athletes. You do think the height helps, but there's something off kilter. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love like looking a certain way and dressing up and all of that, but I agree with you. I think as an on-camera broadcaster, we want to give other women and men permission to show up as their most authentic self. So when you feel the need to cake it on and play
it's your
a part.
Armor. It's armor.
It's armor. Or we're just doing it to appease the boss, or a look, or a demographic that I think is needing to take more of the filters off camera these days. Yeah. So, look, I know I only have you for a few more minutes, but I did want to ask you, I'm going to ask you where people can find your book. But first, it's amazing to think we are 4 months away from 2023. Like, how did that happen? But when you look back, because you are doing so much of this amazing, inspiring, meaningful work in gathering women together, sign me up for whenever I can get to be a part of that. But what is your most proudest moments thus far, looking back to 2022 as we sort of start to kind of look towards 2023?
You know, I think I'm going to shoot from the hip and just say bigger picture, Erin. It's that my identity, like who I am, is not fully wrapped up in what I did. And it's taken me a few months. You know, I left in April of 2021, and I worked so hard and sacrificed and rolled the teleprompter with my foot and lived in the small towns and ate ramen noodles and had no friends for many, many years, right? To be able to maybe one day get to where I was. But I will forever look back on that time as a very special time in my life, but I have needed to move forward, and it's almost like somebody said it so wisely to me when I was just jumping off the high dive and not totally knowing what I was jumping into, you know, that you will only be able to see 6 feet in front of you, and you've got to have your high beams on. And for anyone listening who is in a space where you left one huge thing, where your identity was so inextricably linked to that thing, because you know there's more out there for you, and that you know that you need to dream another dream. And so it's been my work in extricating who I thought I needed to be, or how my identity was so into like being, you know, just even saying like, hi, I'm Brooke Baldwin, and just stopping there, not being like, I'm Brooke Baldwin from CNN. You know, it's simple things like that. And I'm so proud of myself. I really like myself. I have all these ideas for things I want to do, you know, in the near future, and I'm working on them, and, you know, baby steps, baby.
I have to say, I feel so seen, because I think, as you know, and we discussed this in an email, as a female, you know, high achieving, high performing, high succeeding. We feel we want to make the generation before us proud because they sacrifice so much. Yeah. And then what ends up happening is it becomes a toxic relationship with our career. Yeah. And what happens is, I feel, is I am my career.
Yes.
And then I get into this, like, this is not a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak for Tom Brady, because I think Tom Brady is an incredible human. But do athletes struggle retiring from the NFL because essentially it's a death of an identity, you know, and it's hard.
Which is why I shout out to Serena Williams and her beautiful piece in Vogue magazine, and her word. She's like, I'm not retiring, I'm evolving. And I read that. Yes.
Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's an evolution. Yes, you may not be doing that exact thing you were known for so many years. Okay, you know, maybe that is retirement in that way, but still around. Serena's gonna like crush it in whatever it is that she chooses to do next. And Sue Bird, and I'm not putting myself with those women, but you know, it's like the whole notion of evolving. That is where we are.
I was going to ask you, most valuable thing you learned this year, and you just crushed it. Like, mic drop. Like I said, that feels so validating for women who feel they need to continue to crush whatever narrative and be what they need to be for everybody else. And it's time to be what we need to be for us. Last but certainly not least, what do you do for self-care? And then how do we find your book?
Self-care is, I wake up in the morning and I meditate for 20 minutes. I work out for an hour. I need a good hard sweat. Most of the time I do this thing called The Class. You can just find it at theclass.com. It's like spiritual exercise. That's all. You just have to try it. And then I journal. Oftentimes when I'm finished sweating, I'm really, really clear. And so I'll journal, not every day, but when I'm feeling moved or I'm perplexed or whatever emotion, or I need to work something out, I'm my most honest self on the page. And then I like get rocking and rolling in my day. I make sure to pet my pug, because at 19, you know, he gives me life. And God bless this little miracle dog that just keeps on hanging on. And I reach out to my friends a lot. I really do believe in, I live the huddle, and you know, smooch my husband when I can. And that's happy.
I mean, sounds like a dream life. Huddle, how women unlock their collective power. You're creating such a community of amazing talent and people and meaning around you. And I'm so honored that I've got this time with you. Brooke Baldwin, you are amazing. I am like fangirling. Thank you so much for your time today. Seriously.
Erin, thank you. And thank you everyone watching. I appreciate y'all so much. We're in it. We're huddling. It's happening.
Bye, girl.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.